let's talk about The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I went on a bit of a journey with this one, with my thoughts and feelings. Initially, because the writing, the quality of it is so well done, I was enjoying it. And I still don't think it's a bad book, but it did get to a certain point, I would say maybe around the halfway mark, where I thought this could have been structured in a more thoughtful way. The way that it focuses on the characters, or in some instances completely disregards characters, it frustrated me. It left me wanting more. The book ended and I was not completely satisfied with how it had been handled. And that is a shame, because I think had the right people edited this and looked over it, to rearrange things in a more purposeful way, would have loved it. But currently, I think it's just okay. Like, it didn't blow me away, I'm afraid. I think the biggest issue for me is that there is no clear sense of focus. Who are we supposed to be paying the most attention to? Who even is our main character? Because I would like to think it's the twins and, the eponymous vanishing half of it all, the colorism that leads to the passing, the way that Stella is able to blend into white society because her skin is light enough. But the narrative jumps around to so many other places and then forgets about them, seemingly out of nowhere. And it annoyed me, honestly enough. It really got to me, because I can see how the pieces, if they had been put together in a different way, could have given us such a better finished product. And that's why I wish the people around Britt Bennett on her editing team were like, hey, what if we move this part here, we focus more on this character. I wish it had just been workshopped maybe 5% more, just put it in the oven for 10 more minutes and it would have come out perfect. Because I am being very pernickety. This isn't a bad book, but I am at a point where I'm reading enough books that, especially with literary fiction, you are going to take out your little gem appraisal glass, you're going to have a look at it and you're going to say, that's wrong. I can see an imperfection here and I don't like it. From the moment that Stella and Desiree run away from home, the twins, because they're sick of the town of Mallard, this small town that's not even on a map in Louisiana, where nothing's ever going on. The girls know that they don't have much of a future there. And it's this town that's known where everyone, they're black people, but their skin is light enough that they could pass for white. So the twins move to New Orleans. They run away from home, from their mum. And they're also motivated by the tragedies of their childhood. They watch their father get brutally murdered. And that's all very upsetting. But then the second that one of the twins decides to pass into white society, while the other twin runs back with her new daughter to the town of Mallard, we don't see the town of Mallard again until the very ending of the book. It is brought up at times, but largely forgotten about. And I understand why, because Stella herself has forgotten about her heritage. I understand the point that Britt Bennett is making. But then when there's so much judgment on Stella's character for abandoning her family, it then feels irrational to us as the reader, because we don't see the effect that it then has on her actual family. For hundreds of pages, we don't see Desiree, we don't see Adele, their mother, we don't see that the toll it has taken on them to lose a sister, a mother, a daughter rather. We needed that. We really did. If it had just bounced between them a bit more, actually shown us that sort of upstairs, downstairs, how the other half are living, it would feel more poignant and you would feel that disparity more. Instead, you have to gauge the whole thing just from one side of it. We spend so much time in California, in Los Angeles, and I didn't dislike it because it was interesting. But it just felt like only one half of the picture, and that frustrated me. I think it's time to talk about Jude and Reese. So Jude is the daughter of Desiree, the one who stayed in Mallard, or rather came back after running away, and had a child with a man who was abusive to her. Again, that's never revisited, which felt upsetting to sort of dismiss, because domestic abuse is a really serious topic. But after that's addressed, it never comes up again, which I found strange. But then Jude, she gets a running scholarship to go to USC in the West Coast, and by some miracle bumps into her auntie Stella, who of course she doesn't know because Stella is masquerading as a white person. But the reason I bring this up is because, sorry, there's a lot to unpack, and I'm probably not doing the best job of it, but Jude, she gets a boyfriend called Reese, and Reese is a trans man. And I was so excited because the trans agenda is like such an underrepresented part of literary fiction, and it's becoming more and more talked about, which is always nice to see. But in this book, it feels like such an accessory. It's never properly fleshed out because Reese is part of the supporting cast. And so while I liked the way that we step into drag bars, we see the sort of West Hollywood queer culture, we see all of that unravel. Later on in the book, we see the impact of the HIV epidemic and AIDS. None of it is really given the time to properly express itself or sink in, because this book is about race first and sexuality and gender identity second and third. And that is such a shame to me. And what I don't like as well is that, what is the motivation for including this? Are you saying that Reese's transition from a AFAB, from a biological woman into a trans man, are you comparing that to passing as a white person? Because if you are, then I don't really care for that comparison, because those two things are very different. And I think it's insensitive to trans people to make that comparison. So the whole thing just feels a bit like, what are we doing? Why is this in here? If you're not going to properly explore it, don't bother at all. And that was how I felt about a lot of things in this book. It was like, I need you to have a moment or leave. And ultimately, I don't think the moment was had. So I can't earnestly say pick this up unless you feel strongly about the subject material. You know, if you have an experience with colorism, being treated differently for having darker skin, things like that. Otherwise, there's got to be better books out there. Of the books that I've read this year alone, I think The God of Small Things and Homegoing both explored colorism in a more effective way, and having that storyline that we have in The Vanishing Half that also happens in Homegoing, where this sort of diaspora of African Americans then later on over several generations causes two people who are actually related to cross paths. That is really cool. But in this book, it feels so rushed that it almost feels impossible. Like, what are the chances that Jude would come across the daughter of Stella and all of a sudden see the link, be like, oh, wow, we're actually related? It just doesn't come to fruition for me in an organic, meaningful way. And then when we get to the ending, spoiler alert, whatever, the grandmother, Adele, she dies from dementia. Again, it's not really properly fleshed out, but there is a funeral. We don't get like a final send-off from Stella. Like, she doesn't come to terms with what she did, how she sort of forsaken her family to embrace this new life for herself. But then we also don't get like the characters coming together and understanding the difference in their ways. And it's frustrating because there are arcs in there. Like, there's one character called Early who ends up becoming like the partner to Desiree, and he has a lovely character arc. But it's mired in all of this other confusing stuff where either the tone is off or the focus isn't there. I don't know. It didn't make me feel enough, and it needed to, because this is a book that had the potential to really go there.